It's just based on the neuron, like this structure, okay? And for this structure, and there are some, for this one, it's just one neuron, and they have the dendrites, okay? And the dendrites just as the they can receive the input signal, okay? And they receive the input signal to the cell body here. But for one cell body, there is not only one dendrite, okay? And there are several many, okay? And for each one, it received the signal. And to the cell body, this effect to the cell body just like the summing, okay? And for the cell body, this is the input signal. And the output signal will transport along the axon to another neuron, okay? And is there any output here? It depends on the energy in the cell body, okay? Energy in the cell body. And if the energy in the cell body it is accumulated to a threshold, then we say that this neuron is fair. It's fair. That means there is an output transport to another neuron. Otherwise, there is no output here. Okay. And from this one is one neuron. This one is another neuron, and they connected with the axon. Along the axon. And here, you should note that there is a synapse. And this one, and also the dendritic, this one is to the cell body is based on the synapse. And for this synapse, we think that it with different strengths. And in deep learning, we think that this kind of strength can be learned and controlled. I don't know you understand this one. This is the basic idea of the deep learning. Since the strength is learned, it can be learned and can be controlled. That means we can just set the value, or we can learn the value during the learning stage. During the learning stage. Okay, so in our brain there are many neurons. It's over 86 billion of the neurons in our brain. Okay, and they connected each other. They are connected each other. And here we model one neuron like this model, and we can see. Okay, here. We can see here is the input, and this then with different weight, and here, because the dendrite is the summing effect to the cell body, so here is the summing operation here, and since this is the base, and since for the cell body, not all input has the corresponding output. So here is the activation function. Okay? Activation function. The activation function makes sure that if the energy is accumulated to a threshold, then it passed to another neuron. So this is the basic model. In this model, that each neurons can have different values of weights and bears. This is called the parameter in this model. Okay, the parameter in this model. So let's have a look about this model from a mathematical idea. Okay, and the essence of the network, in fact, it is just a function. So if we treat all the input here as x1, x2, x3, and we just composed it into a vector, and we named the vector as x here, and the corresponding output is Y. And the Y's form depends on different tasks, okay? For classification, maybe it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, like this. And for the regression, maybe it is a continuous value, okay? It is a continuous value. So here, Y is the output, X is the input, and the whole structure is, once it is fixed, the unknown is the parameter. What's the parameter? It's just the weight and the bears, okay? The weight and the bears. So we can just write down this one like Y equals Fx, okay? Fx. So it is just a function. And this function, that means Y equals Fx here, and with some, maybe seed, and the seed is just the parameter here, okay, unknown parameter here. And for this one, for this function, it is a linear function or non-linear function. It totally depends on the activation function, okay? It totally depends on the activation function. Here the sigma as the activation function. If the activation function, it is a linear function, then the whole model is just a linear function, okay? And if the activation function, it is a non-linear one, then it is complex. And in deep learning or deep network, normally the activation function, it is non-linear, okay? If it is linear, then there are some other problem will be produced in the deep learning, okay? So in deep learning, this is non-linear one. And normally in deep learning structure, the sigma just selected from this kind of function, like sigmod and dlosX, like this, okay? And today we want to introduce another activation. I call this the cosine activation. Okay? This is a new one that I just proposed this kind of activation and combine it into the deep learning network. Okay? This is our structure. We call this compact network because it is easy. It can be only with just one hidden layer. Okay, that means this is the input, this is the output, and just this one. And the latent layer, we use the cosine activation. So this is this task. If this network it is for classification task, then the output there we use the softmax, and we just use the sigmod function to make this layer as a classifier, okay, And it needs to be noted that the input here in this simple structure, the input is not based on the pixel, it's based on the feature, okay? The feature may be handcrafted feature, or from other deep model, you can extract the feature here. So the input is not based on the pixel. It's not based on the pixel. If you want to input, if you want the input is based on the pixel, then you can connect the CNN. It's just a normal structure of CNN here, and after the full connected layer, and it's just the input here. So you can treat this network separately, and the first part is just for the, for the feature extraction task. That means that based on the CNN, after the full connected layer, and we can extract the feature. And after this one, we connected as this connected additional layer with cosine activation, and then we can get the output. And this structure can be trained together or can be learned together. Okay? okay? Maybe now you have a question. Why you use the cosine activation? Normally they use other kind of activation. Why you use the cosine activation? And I want to introduce the cosine activation from the kernel aspect. I don't know you know the kernel trick or not. We all know that a kernel is that means before deep learning, kernel method is very important for nonlinear classifier. Okay, nonlinear classifier. That means for the sample space like x1, x2, the sample space, we can map the sample space from the original feature space to a higher space, higher dimensional space. I don't know you know or not. Based on this fact, okay? Based on this fact. And this is just the inner product, okay? And the kernel trick, normally we don't need to know what's the phi it is. And because this inner product is equals to this phi, so we just use the kernel trick like SVM classifier, and we can get a nonlinear classifier and to get the, I think the suitable performance, okay? Performance. But you know that for the kernel matrix, and based on this equation, we can compose the kernel matrix. But for the kernel matrix, it's only suitable for, you know, the data set is not, or the sample space is not very large. If the data set is scaled, it's very large, then the kernel matrix is very hard to represent, okay? It's very hard to represent. So there is another kind of problem, we call this kernel approximation. Kernel approximation. That means based on this one, we have another one, the third term in this equation. That means we want to map the original feature space to another one, another complex and with high dimensional space. And but here we want to know the exact what form it is. What form it is. Once we have known the form of the phi here, that means for the input we just use the phi, do the mapping, okay? Do the mapping. And then we just compute this one as the inner product. It's okay. It can fix the problem caused by the big data. Okay, caused by the big data. And this kind of, we call this kernel approximation. Okay, kernel approximation. And here, if we want to find this phi and also make sure that the kernel matrix is the positive definite, okay? Has a positive definite. And here we just introduced the Kernel theorem, okay? The Kernel theorem. And the Kernel theorem is just based on this one, this equation. This equation. And for this equation, you can see that we treat this mu as a positive measurement, okay? A positive measurement. And that means the x1 minus x2 just a value, okay? Or just a variable here. And this is, it can be represented by x. That means here, the mu is the positive measurement. That means here, this equation is just the inverse Fourier transform, okay? The inverse Fourier transform. And it can be a function like this one. And x1 minus x2 is just the x. So we can have a function kx, okay? It should be kx here. It should be like this. And you can see that this one is just the inverse Fourier transform. and this is x, this is x. Okay? And if we see, if the kernel, if we want to treat this one as a kernel function or kernel, we can compose the kernel matrix. That means this one, we want to make this one as this one. That means the kernel is shift invariant. Shift invariant, okay? If it is the shift invariant kernel, then this equation satisfied. This equation satisfied. And for this one, for the Bohanna theorem, that means from this equation we get this one, and we get the kernel matrix. This kernel matrix must be positive definite. Positive definite. Understand my meaning? Okay, it's not easy to understand. Okay, and here for this equation, we can just change this equation into this form, and the cassette should be with this form. Okay, the cassette should be with this form. Okay, if you understand this equation, let's have a look about this one. This one, I just said it is a positive measurement. Okay? If we treat this as a probability function, then it's just the expression. I don't know, I see it clear or not. That means we can get this one. That P x1, x2 is equals to this one, these two, almost equals, okay? And then we can treat this one as the first phi, and this one is the transform of the phi, okay? Then we can write down the equation like this. And here, if we use some sampling method, we can get the omega 1 to omega d, and this is the vector. Okay? That means once we have the omega 1 to omega d, that means we have this one, and we can get exactly the functions form during the kernel mapping. Understand? Why cosine activation? I just deduce the cosine activation from this one. We all know that this is for this one, it's just to keep this form. It is the exponential complex function, okay? And in order to avoid the complex computing, and we just keep the real part. That means here is the z, here is the z. The z is just to keep this form. It keeps this form, okay? And here the omega, it is continuous one. If we just make it discrete, that means we have some samples. Here. And omega 1 to omega d here. That means we can have the exactly form of phi. Exactly form of phi. Okay, so if you understand the whole procedure, and maybe you can understand that why we use the cosine activation. Okay? Why we use cosine activation. And once you understand we use the cosine activation, and the following step is easier. It's easier. For example, here is the x, here is the y, And the relations from x and y, we can just use two functions to model it, okay? Two functions to model it. For example, this matrix is just use the W to represent this. That means the different weight, okay? Different weight. And this one is we use the S, the matrix S to represent this, okay? And then the relations between the input and the output, we can use this one. That means just the two functions. One is F, one is G. F function and G function, okay? And for F function, it's just like this, because it is a classification task. So we just use the softmax, okay? And for the G function, we just use the cosine activation like this. And the hidden variable, we just denote it as Z. Okay. If you understand the whole structure here, and normally for the optimization, and we need the objective function. Here the objective function with 3 terms, okay? The first one, and the regular term on W, and the regular term on S. And for the loss function here, we just use the cross entropy, okay? Cross entropy here. And for the first regular term, we just use this W21. And this W21, it can make the sparsity. It can make the sparsity of the W column, okay? That means the W column is sparsity, means it can do the feature selection work using this W magic, okay? Feature selection work. And for the second regular term, and we just use this form. And here, this is the nuclear norm, okay? The first term here is nuclear norm, and it makes sure that it is low rank, okay? And the second term is just the F norm. It is to avoid the overfitting. And so we have 3 terms here in objective function, the J1, J2, and J3. And for the optimization step, we just fix one to optimize another. For example, the first step, we fix W and optimizing S here. And we just compute the derivative, okay? Derivative here. And also, we can compute the derivative here for S. And for the U matrix and the V matrix, it's just the singular value decomposition of S. It's based on this one. That means the U height and the V height is just based on the SVD decomposition. And we just use this equation to update the S. And the next step, we just fix X and optimize W here, and we can also compute the matrix derivative like this, and also like this. Okay. This is the whole idea of the compact network with cosine activation. And because for the image processing, we all know that there is no special information. So here we can connect this whole work with the SPM, to get for the better performance. And we have done the experiments on 2 data sets for scene classification. The first one is MIT Windows, and with 67 classes. And another one is the same data set, and with bigger classes. And this is the performance we have. And from this table, you can see that no matter for which data set, and the CACN means compactive network with cosine activation. CACN. It can be connected with CNN and also combined with SPM. You can see that the last line with the highest performance here. And also we compared with other methods. You can see that our method is not the best one, because for example, for the place speaker BN inception, this network, the place network is very, very big. It's about over 20 G for image data set. Okay? So it can highly enhance the performance here like this. This is for comparison on MIT DOM. And also, we are not the best one, but still achieve the state-of-the-art performance. Okay? And this is for the first task. And another task is about multi-regressions. And for multi-regressions, the output is not discrete, it's just a continuous value. Okay? And we apply this method to two data sets. And the first one is for robot, and the second one is for face alignment. Okay? For face alignment. And for the robot, it's just the freedom. The 7 freedom is continuous. Okay? And for face alignment, it's just the point, the coordinate. It's also the continuous value. Okay? It's also continuous value. And in this network, for the multi-regression task, we changed the network a little. In the former one, here we just use one matrix S to represent the relations of the latent and the output. Okay? And we just add the constraint as low rank constraint, the nuclear, okay, the nuclear norm. And here we just use two matrices. We just use two matrices here. And one is for me, one is for you. Okay? One is for you. And also, it's the similar. For this layer, we just use the cosine activation. Oh, okay. Cosine activation here. We use the cosine activation. And the similar deduce procedure like this. And the only difference lies in that the objective function here. And we do not use in the last one we use the cross attribute. But here we can use this form or this form or this form. And in our work we use just this form. We call this calibration loss. Okay. Calibration loss. And this kind of calibration loss is well handled the noise data. The noise data. And the deduce procedure is similar to the upper one, to the last one. And just the form is different. And this also, that means it is the objective function, and we use this objective function to optimize the U, V, and W. And we compute the gradient for U, V, and W separately. And then we use the SGP to get the final result. And this is the performance. And the first one is based on the robot trader, and you can see that our method keep the top performance. And for this one, this is the data side for face alignment. It's also the smaller the better. For this value, the smaller the better. So you can see that our method is okay. And also for the 300 VW, it's just a video to do the face alignment work. And also our network is achieve state-of-the-art performance. And this is another one. And our performance is here. And to make sure that the cosine activation function is good or is suitable for the task, we also do the experiment for like this. We just plot the distribution based on the real data set, and one is for this one is for this one. And we get the distribution is similar to cosine function. And conclusion, I don't know I make it clear or not for my new idea about the cosine activation. And I think cosine activation is a new activation here. Maybe it is in our experiments it's suitable for not only the classification task but also the regression task. Okay? And it's easy to combine with the with other deep model like VGG or something like others. Okay? And I think the cosine activation is just come from the kernel approximation. It keeps, in normal kernel approximation, it's just randomly sample the W or the omega, okay? And here we combined it into the deep network, and we learned the W based on the data in a supervised way. I think it's better. That's why it's keep the top performance for some task, okay? For example, the face alignment, like this. And also the CSN, the compact network with the cosine activation, it's easy to combine with other methods. For example, like the SPI, okay? And I think it's a work needed to do some research further. Okay? And any questions? Thanks for your attention. And this is my talk. Okay.
You have done 2 experiments with different data sets, and you have gotten better accuracy with smaller data sets.
More data set. Yeah, normally more data, more higher accuracy, okay?
But here you have lesser data for MIT.
MIT, no.
But you got better accuracy.
Sorry?
You got better accuracy from smaller data set. How is it possible? Don't you need more data set for better accuracy?
For MIT, no? For this one?
MIT Indoor.
Yeah, for this one we can get it's not the top, it's not the best performance, but it's okay. It's okay for this one.
It's actually better than Sun 397.
That was around 50% something like that.
The 96.53%. Sorry, what's your question?
How is accuracy for MIT Indoor better than that for Sun 397?
For Sun? I understand your question. The classes is not the same. For this one maybe the data is not enough, but it's only, but for this one, it's 397 classes. It's hard, if I distinguish you and you, maybe it's easier. But if let me distinguish every one of you, it's hard, okay? It's different task.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So these two datasets, as far as I understood, was images, right?
Yeah.
So just imagine that if you don't have images but you have text.
Text.
Yeah. And then how do you think this technique is going to work?
I didn't do any work about text. I don't know, but basically, you know, I just show the experiment not only on image. For example, the 300 VW is just for video. It's video data set, okay? It's a video data set. And this one, the robot is just a smaller data set, but it's task for predict the robot freedom. It has 7 freedoms, okay? And just predict the freedom. And I don't know, it's for text, it's okay or not okay, but I'm really not sure. Okay? Okay.
Understand.
Thank you.